just 2 slides actually, but then I will go on to the website. So the CityClim project had a lot of different goals to achieve, as Dr. Stefan Holzner has already showed us in the beginning. There was the citizen climate knowledge services, and there's the administration services, and what Dr. Stefan Horn has showed us as largely the city administration services, and one part that's actually addressing stakeholders in cities, city planners, and people who try to find out how they can install mitigation adaptation measures against urban heat islands and other adverse climate effects. But another part of this project was also to increase awareness for climate change and for climate information, and to make that information more accessible to everyone, regardless of their occupation. And the problem often with climate data or historical data is that usually that data is available and free, but you have to collect it from a lot of different multiple sources, and you also need to be a little bit trained. Usually what you find on these climate websites that are available is download this Python script and then just install this package, and then you can see the climate data from Norway or whatever. That was just made up an example, but that's how it often is, that it's very hard, or there are a lot of obstacles for just normal people who are interested in this kind of information to access this information, because they usually have to bring in some kind of knowledge to be able to understand how they can retrieve the information and how they can actually access it at all. And that's why one of the goals in that project was also to provide the beginning and the foundation of a climate portal that will be free and accessible for everyone, and makes it easy to access vast amount of data, like hundreds, or and in some cases it's even hundreds, but decades of measurements with one click available, and then visualized in a format that is understandable even for people who don't have a meteorological background or a strong climate research background or something like that. And that is what we did here. We wanted to provide easy functionality, but the main part that we did within the project was to lay the foundation to begin such a one-stop shop for climate information. So what I will show you in a couple of minutes is not the end of this climate information portal, and it's not the full version. It's just the beginning, and some functionalities are available yet, but we laid the foundation during the project to be able to handle all that data, because the biggest problem with collecting meteorological data from all over the world is harmonization, because every National Weather Service or every weather network has different kinds of naming of variables, different kind of retrievals, different measurement intervals, different variables that are measured at all, and how they're measured and how they're aggregated, and to kind of homogenize that to get it on one common you know what I mean, on one common basis, to be able to access it as a user who does not know all of these differences. That took a while to kind of lay the foundation, have all these routines in place, methodologies in place, having a database that is actually able to store and retrieve and at the same time compute all these aggregations every day, because of course the climate information comes in every day, so you have to update the database as well. And all of that has happened within this project. And We also wanted to provide it in a way that you can share it easily on social media, that you can have nice little pictures that you can easily communicate to other people who might be interested. So that's just a very brief summary of what we did. So we collected data from all kind of sources. We actually collected it from much more sources than are shown here, but one of the biggest one is NOAA, and then MTL that's actually us. We have our own weather station network of more than 1,000 sensors. We also collected amateurs and citizen science data together with the Helmholtz Institute, the WFZ, that are also partners in this consortium. Although we treat this data a little bit different, usually because amateur stations do not adhere to world meteorological standards, so they usually can be installed everywhere, not on a grass like the World Meteorological Organization says as a standard, but usually people have it on their window or whatever, so there might be some kind of a bias introduced, so we treat them a little bit different from the other data. Then, of course, German National Weather Service, all the other national weather services we are starting to collect. So what I will show you in a minute will actually be populated much more in the future. ECAT, that's some kind of organization that also quality checks climate data, and Copernicus data, of course. Then we take them in, we take the 10 minutes, 1 hour, 3 hour, 6 hour, 24-hour measurements that we receive. We, as I said, we put them on one basis, aggregate them, and try to get out visualizations that are meaningful to people. And yeah, and as I said before, we try to build that system in a way that it's very flexible, so we can amend all kind of other visualizations in the future. We also plan on making it possible for users to run statistical tests, because usually it's always the argument in the media is always, oh, but is this difference significant? And this is actually quite easy to accomplish in a web application, to compare the averages of certain measurements on the fly, and that's also what is planned. And then we also included other kind of data sources that show climate developments. For example, reanalysis, that's when a weather model, like for example the Ultra HD, but in that case it's the ECNWF, the biggest or most known European weather model, and the Cosmo, and this model gets rerun in basically in the other direction, rerun into the past, integrating all kind of observations, and tries to show how past weather patterns were and looked like on a aerial level, and not only the observations that are actually point observations, but showing the whole picture. I will show you that in a minute. I will have to change what I'm sharing. Okay. So it should be this. So this is what we came up with in the end. That's the first, I would say, the first iteration of our climate portal. What you can see here, so the starting page is basically this map. It's an international map worldwide with all kind of weather stations that have a certain amount of data and a certain for certain parameters that are of interest. We have started with precipitation and temperature because they are most interesting for climate. We will include snow height in the future, and we will include other parameters. We also include sunshine duration for Germany, because Germany has a lot of these measurements. And what you can see if you hover over these stations, you see the availability of certain parameters and for that station over time. So you can see here For example, for Huntington, there was a very straightforward precipitation measurement from the beginning up until now, whereas the temperature measurement was has some holes in it. So for whatever reason, it was discontinued in between and then picked up again. And what you can do now here in Germany, we also have the sunshine duration, as I said, that is measured. And what you can do is you can zoom in, and as I said, this is the beginning. We will start to include now all the national weather services because they have quality check data, and we also do quality checks, but the national weather services usually also give out data sets with quality check data, and that's a very good beginning. We will start with France and Spain as next national weather services to be included. So this map will be much fuller in a couple of weeks. And for example, if you go ahead here, that's the airport in Barcelona, you get these typical climate stripes that shows you the anomaly. So you have a reference period. In that case, it's 1961 to 1990. And then we compute the difference from that average and how every year has differed from the long average from 1961 to 1990. And then you see sometimes if it's brown, it is below the average, and if it's blue, it's above the average. But usually that's more interesting for temperature. As you can see here now, that's a very lucky series, but we have also different ones. I will show you one that has a better series like this. You can see here the typical climate stripes that Madrid is becoming hotter in comparison to the long-term average. We can also change the reference periods. You will see that if I take a reference period that is closer to the now, obviously these climate stripes get cooler again because the bias is kind of taken out of the by itself, because those years were already hotter than they should be. So the comparison here becomes a little less dramatic. But that's what we wanted to show. We can also show it by seasons. If the data is available, we can also show these kinds of heat maps where you can see the absolute temperatures for the years. That's the absolute also by month. What is the average temperature that you see in Madrid in January in these days? And one of the most interesting things is, at least for me, is this this visualization. So the red line shows you the actual year, that's 2024, and then the black line shows you the climate reference again. So what is expected in that kind of period? Let's change that to 1960. Oh, obviously that's not available. Oh yeah, it makes sense because the data is not that long. And then you can see how the actual year is doing compared to the average. And these gray lines that you see in the backgrounds, that are actually single years included in that time frame from 1951 to 24. And then of course we show the records, and we show these typical interesting days that you provide for climate. And the other things that we have done is we have this weather station main network that Stefan has already shown us before, where you can also go back in time and here change the year back to, in some places actually back to 1700, where some monk in some church has done weather observations that we have digitalized and put into our portal. And these kind of things are interesting too. Of course, it's then a very small amount of measurements that you get, but that's a measurement from the 9th of December 1930. So these kind of things we made available here. We also have the reanalysis, as I told you. These are the reruns of weather models backwards, basically integrating all the real observations that have taken place, usually observational data from stations, but sometimes also satellite observation and radar observation, stuff like that. And you can see here with the ECMWF, I think it comes in every 3 days, so we update it. And here you can also go back and change the year or the date back to 1950. So you can actually look back at weather patterns in the 1950s for all kind of different parameters that are rerun from the ECMWF, and also the Cosmo that is only available until 2019. But here you have a little bit of a higher resolution, spatial resolution, and also can check how was the weather, basically, what was the min and maximum temperature and so on at that day. So these kind of tools are the starting point to make a comprehensive climate portal available. This is all free. I have, so you don't have to pay for it. You can go to meteorologics.com and check it out. And then also what I forgot to show is you can, of course, also share these kind of things. For example, here, and then download it. Download the picture or share it on social media. So you have these classical climate stripes and can show it from your city. Okay, that's it for the climate information portal. You have questions?
Thank you. Thank you, Miriam, for that presentation and very cool demo. Any questions for Miriam? We have a few minutes. You can say questions out loud or in the chat. Oh, Miriam, is it possible to copy paste the URL?
Yes.
Perfect.
And there is also for the German-speaking countries, it's kachelmannwetter.com. For the international, everything else, despite the US, is meteorologics.com, and on Weather US is our American version, but it's basically all the same portal, just looking a little different depending on which country looking at it from.
Thank you. If you think of a question later, then you can also ask Miriam during the discussion as well. So if there's no further questions, we can move on to Dr. Anita Byer's presentation about Earth observation, the Earth observation-based service.